Katja, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see you again. Nice to all be back in person. Is it nice for you to be having conversations with your colleagues again here?
It is so nice. I really realized how much I miss the casual exchange and yes, seeing people in person. It is just nice. We are social animals.
That casual exchange is often where you hear the most interesting things that are being talked about. Tell me about that and what you've been having conversations about this week.
Some of the really interesting conversations we had this week were actually about the change in risk management, partly well before COVID and exacerbated by COVID, and both about the opportunities and about the risks. The opportunities are that we never changed as fast, at least in our working lifetime, as through the pandemic. So digitization, working from home, flexibility, all of that was accelerated, and it was very good for us because we are in a very conservative industry. And some of the older fashioned managers who thought people are going to be lazy when they don't see them, they've been proven wrong. So that's, a lot of it is positive despite how hard the pandemic is for all of us. What is, however, a little bit worrisome for many of us, and we had plenty of discussions there, was about a lot of the managers now, and okay, we had a step back in the pandemic, but now saying we want to go back to the old way we worked. And that is plain and simply ridiculous because we have lost good people in the pandemic because they felt the work didn't suit them and they had double pressure and all of these kind of things. But if you now want to go back to the old models, you will lose really good people. And that became very evident across many of the discussions.
So in a way, those CROs have got to change the way they lead. What would you say are the key kind of qualities of good leaders as we go into 2022?
Well, on that, I had an excellent panel on the first morning. Actually, two panels there, and they both talked the same. So on the bright side, we have some CROs who are doing great. They really walk the talk, they lead by example. There was Philippa Hertz, for example, who talked about millennials expect something different. If you do not create psychological safety for them to be themselves, you will lose them and you will definitely not attract them. And then there was Tabile from South Africa, and she was very knowledgeable about the inner transformational journey a leader has to do to connect with their purpose, to connect with their emotional competencies, so you can lead your team the right way, in particular in times of crisis.
You talked there about purpose and you talked about millennials. The other factor is perhaps that as well as wanting a good environment for themselves, they care more about the sort of companies that they're working for. And obviously we're seeing a lot of themes around ESG and particularly the S, I suppose, that COVID has highlighted too.
Yes, and again, the good companies are already well on that journey. So, and by the way, the S, the social factors, both internally, how they treat their workforce and their organization in general, and the external factor, how they treat their customer, the impact they have on society. And both Alex Duncan from the Trust Group and Vickers Lewis from Hollard, both of them come from companies who have a very strong purpose, and ESG is not something apart, it is part of their decision making. And it serves them really well because it makes dilemma situations easier for them. There's never black and white only, but having a clear compass is extremely helpful when you have to decide on a new product and you realize, does that product add value to my customers? If not, even if it's profitable, we're not going to do it.
We can't avoid talking about the E or the climate aspect of all of that as well. How significant is that, and what have you seen this week in terms of where we're at with trying to quantify that risk?
That actually is really interesting. So on the one side, we've seen tremendous progress and some really, really good example where, for example, investment companies dig in deep, build their own models, and they don't stay on the surface. They don't go, okay, we go out of mining. They say mining needs to be differentiated if it's gold, if it's like special sands, etc., and how they mine. They don't just all go for tech companies, because we all know, let's look at Amazon. It's a tech company, but they're not really that sustainable with all the shipping and so on and the waste. So having a differentiated view is extremely important, and that is where the challenge lie. We are getting better in collecting the data, but we're not there yet. And some of the new solutions out there, in particular those solutions which really show not just your own organization but your supply chain, they are extremely interesting and very promising.
Just finally, if anyone listening to you speak here this week was to take away a message, a CRO, on what their leadership should look like, what would you hope that message would be?
Well, it's the same old message, and it's nevertheless true. The S in ESG matters. It wasn't called S before. It's about leadership. It's about treating people well. And what you get from that is so much more important than just the bottom line, but you get bottom line impact from there. So it doesn't cost you much. It costs you effort. It costs you your real will to be a better person and grow continuously, but you don't have to invest $1 million to be a better leader.
And it's good for the bottom line.
It is good for the bottom line.
Katja, great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's always fun talking with you.